Sweat trickled down necks in the crowded Atlanta courtroom, the air thick with tension, as Officer Sheila Brantley smirked, watching Marcus Holloway, a black man in a sharp suit, stand convicted of assaulting her. The judge's gavel crashed, sentencing him to 10 years, yet Marcus nodded calmly, a secret glinting in his eyes. Sheila gloated, unaware her victory was a mirage. Then a clerk whispered to the judge, her face blanching, "What truth could unravel this moment forever?" Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from, and if you stand for justice, hit like and subscribe, because tomorrow's explosive episode will leave you speechless. 3 weeks before the courtroom drama shook Atlanta, the sun dipped low over the city's Buckhead district, casting long shadows across streets lined with upscale shops and gleaming glass towers. Marcus Holloway gripped the wheel of his sleek, black sedan, the engine purring as he navigated the evening traffic, his broad shoulders relaxed under a tailored navy jacket. At 38, with close-cropped hair and a steady gaze, he carried himself with a quiet assurance that came from years of proving doubters wrong. Tonight, he was just a man heading home after a long day, the radio humming a soft jazz tune. But trouble had a way of finding him, and it was already watching from a patrol car parked near a boutique with frosted windows. Officer Sheila Brantley sat behind the wheel, her buzzed blonde hair catching the last rays of light, her narrow hazel eyes scanning the road like a hawk hunting prey. At 42, she'd spent 15 years on the force, her badge a shield for every grudge she carried, especially against men like Marcus. Something about his smooth stride, the way he didn't shrink or swagger, twisted her gut. She didn't like it one bit. As Marcus slowed at a stoplight, Sheila flicked on her headlights, the beams slicing through the dusk, and eased her cruiser forward, tires crunching gravel. She pulled up alongside him, her window already buzzing down, and leaned out, her voice cutting through the evening stillness like a blade. "Got a broken tail light, sir," she barked, her lips curling slightly, though she hadn't even checked. Marcus turned his head, meeting her stare with calm brown eyes, his brow lifting just a fraction. "I don't think so, officer. I had it serviced last week." His tone was even, polite but firm, the kind of measured response that came naturally, to him. Sheila's jaw tightened. She didn't like that either, didn't like how he wasn't rattled, wasn't scrambling to please her. She swung her door open and stepped out, her boots thudding on the pavement, her hand resting on the holster at her hip. "Step out of the vehicle," she ordered, her voice dripping with authority she assumed he'd bow to. Marcus exhaled softly, his fingers pausing on the wheel before he reached for the door handle. He knew this dance, had known it since he was 16 and stopped for looking suspicious in his own neighborhood. He climbed out, standing tall at 6'2", his suit crisp against the fading light, and faced her. "Can I ask what this is about?" he said, keeping his hands visible, his voice steady as stone. Sheila squared her shoulders, her wiry frame taut with irritation. "You're in a high-crime area, driving slow, looking like you don't belong. I need to see some ID." It was a lie, every word of it. Buckhead wasn't some gang-riddled slum, it was boutiques and bistros, but she didn't care. She saw a black man in a nice car, and that was enough for her. Marcus's lips pressed into a thin line, but he nodded, reaching slowly for his wallet. "I live 5 miles from here," he said, offering his license. Sheila snatched it, barely glancing at the name, Marcus Holloway, before tossing it onto her cruiser's hood. "Sure you do," she muttered, her sneer widening. A small crowd began to gather across the street, drawn by the flashing lights, a mix of curious shoppers and loiterers clutching coffee cups. A few whispered, others pulled out phones, recording the scene as it unfolded. Sheila noticed, and it fueled her, made her chest puff out a little more. "Hands on the car," she snapped, stepping closer, her breath sharp with stale coffee. Marcus frowned, his patience thinning but still intact. "Officer, I've done nothing wrong. You haven't told me what I'm suspected of." Sheila's eyes flashed, her irritation boiling over at his refusal to cower. "I said hands on the car now," she growled, her hand twitching toward her baton. Marcus sighed, a slow, deliberate sound, and turned, placing his palms on the sedan's warm hood, his jaw tight. He'd been here before, knew compliance was the only way out. even if it burned inside him like a coal. Sheila didn't hesitate. She grabbed his wrist, twisting it hard behind his back, her nails digging into his skin as she slapped cuffs on him with a metallic clank. "You're resisting," she hissed, though he hadn't moved an inch beyond her orders. Marcus winced as she yanked his other arm back, the steel biting into his wrists, but he kept his voice low. "I'm not resisting. You're making a mistake." Sheila shoved him against the car, his cheek pressing into the cool metal, her elbow jabbing his ribs for good measure. "Keep talking, tough guy," she spat, her face inches from his, her breath hot against his ear. The crowd grew louder, some murmuring in disapproval, others egging her on with shouts of "Get him!" and "Show him who's boss." A skinny man in a baseball cap clapped, grinning like it was a sport. Marcus stayed silent now, his mind racing but his body still, knowing any twitch could escalate this further. Sheila stepped back, brushing her hands as if wiping off dirt, her smirk returning as she hauled him toward her cruiser. "Suspicious behavior," she announced to the onlookers, loud enough for the cameras. "Possible burglary suspect." It was nonsense, pure theater, but it played well to the chorus of cheers from the louder voices in the crowd. She shoved Marcus into the back seat, his long legs folding awkwardly, and slammed the door, the sound echoing off the boutique's glass facade. As she climbed into the driver's seat, she caught his eyes in the rearview mirror, steady and unblinking, and something about that look made her grip the wheel tighter. He wasn't scared, wasn't broken, and that gnawed at her more than anything. The drive to the precinct was short, 7 minutes through traffic, the city lights smearing past in streaks of red and gold. Sheila radioed in, her voice clipped. "Bringing in a resistor, male, black, mid-30s, detained on West Peachtree." The dispatcher crackled back, indifferent. Just another night in Atlanta. Marcus sat in silence, his cuffed hands numb, his mind already turning over what came next. He knew this wasn't the end, not by a long shot. Sheila had no idea who she'd just tangled with, but he did. He'd been through worse, had faced down bigger bullies with shinier badges, and he'd learned to wait, to watch, to strike when the moment was right. Sheila pulled into the precinct lot, the gravel crunching under her tires, and dragged him out, her grip rough on his arm. The station buzzed with late-shift chaos, officers shuffling papers, radios squawking, the air thick with sweat and stale donuts. She booked him fast, fingerprints smudging ink onto a card, her report a quick scribble of lies. Suspect resisted, acted aggressively, matched a vague description. Marcus stood tall through it all, his suit wrinkled but his dignity intact, his eyes locked on her as she handed him off to a bored desk sergeant. "Enjoy your night," she said, her voice laced with mock sweetness, before turning on her heel and striding out, her boots clicking on the tile. But as she disappeared into the humid Atlanta night, Marcus sat in the holding cell, the bars cold against his back, and let a faint smile tug at his lips. She thought she'd won this round, thought she'd put him in his place, but she didn't know the storm she'd just kicked up. He'd seen the phone's recording, heard the crowd's mixed reactions, and he knew how to play this game better than she ever would. This stop, this arrest, it was just the spark, and what came next would burn hotter than she could imagine. Sheila had picked the wrong man to mess with, and soon enough, she'd feel the heat. Marcus Holloway sat on the edge of his couch, in the dim glow of his Atlanta living room. The bruises from Sheila Brantley's rough arrest 3 days ago still aching under his navy suit jacket. His wife, Lena, a slender woman with fierce eyes and braided hair pulled tight, handed him a cold pack, her lips pressed into a worried line. "You sure about this?" she asked, her voice soft but edged with steel. Marcus nodded, his steady gaze fixed on the laptop screen where his dashcam footage looped. Sheila slamming him against his sedan, her sneer clear as day, the crowd's jeers a haunting backdrop. "It's the only way," he said, his fingers hovering over the upload button. He'd spent years building a life here, a quiet one, but Sheila had lit a match and he wasn't about to let it fizzle out. He clicked, and the video soared into the digital ether, a spark about to catch fire. Within hours it exploded, racking up 50,000 views, then 100,000, hashtags like "Justice for Marcus" and "Stop Racist Cops" trending across platforms. a wildfire he'd ignited with a single truth. By noon the next day, the city buzzed with outrage, keyboards clacking as strangers typed furious comments, "She's a disgrace," and "How many more like him?" Local news vans parked outside the precinct, reporters in pressed suits shouting questions at stone-faced officers. Marcus stood on his porch, the humid air sticking to his skin, watching the chaos unfold on his phone. A station anchor with a slick comb-over broke the story. Officer Sheila Brantley suspended pending investigation after viral video shows excessive force. Marcus exhaled, a flicker of triumph warming his chest. Lena squeezed his hand, her smile cautious but hopeful. "Maybe this'll change something," she said. And for a moment, he believed it too. The precinct's phone lines jammed with complaints, and a petition demanding Sheila's badge hit 10,000 signatures. Marcus thought he'd won, thought he'd turned her attack into his weapon, but he didn't know the beast he'd poked was already clawing back. Sheila, meanwhile, seethed. In her cramped apartment across town, the blinds drawn tight against the midday sun, her buzzed hair damp with sweat as she paced. The suspension notice sat crumpled on her kitchen counter, a bitter pill she refused to swallow. Her TV blared the news, Marcus's face plastered across the screen, his calm defiance mocking her from every angle. She slammed a fist into the drywall cracking under her knuckles, her breath ragged. "Thinks he's smart," she muttered, her hazel eyes glinting with venom. She wasn't done, not by a long shot. She grabbed her phone, dialing a number she hadn't used in months, her ex-partner, Deputy Chief Victor Rawls, a barrel-chested man with a graying mustache and a reputation for bending rules. "Vic, it's me," she said, her voice low and urgent. "That Holloway punk's trying to bury me. I need a favor." Victor's gravelly laugh crackled through the line. "What's in it for me?" Sheila smirked. "A clean slate on that IA mess last year." He paused, then growled, "Deal. What's the play?" That night, under a moonless sky, Sheila slipped out, her boots silent on the pavement as she approached. Marcus's sedan parked in his driveway. She'd scouted it earlier, knew Lena was at a friend's and Marcus was inside, probably sleeping off his so-called victory. She carried a stolen Glock, wiped clean of prints, a relic from an evidence Locker Victor had misplaced months ago. With a gloved hand, she popped the trunk, her movements quick and practiced, and tucked the gun beneath the spare tire, a ticking bomb Marcus wouldn't see coming. She shut it with a soft thud, her pulse steady, her mind racing with the next steps. Back in her apartment, she dialed an anonymous tip line, her voice disguised with a cheap burner phone. "Check Marcus Holloway's car, black sedan, Peachtree Lane. He's armed, dangerous." She hung up, a cold smile spreading across her face. Let him gloat now. The next morning, Marcus woke to sunlight streaming through his curtains, the air thick with the scent of Lena's coffee brewing in the kitchen. He stretched, the soreness in his ribs easing, and checked his phone. The video had hit 300,000 views, comments flooding in, some calling him a hero, others a troublemaker. He allowed himself a small grin, thinking the tide had turned. Lena poked her head in, her apron dusted with flour. "Pancakes?" she asked, and he nodded, feeling lighter than he had in days. But as he stepped outside to grab the paper, the world shifted. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, closer, until 3 squad cars screeched into his driveway, gravel flying. Officers spilled out, guns drawn, shouting, "Hands up, Holloway!" Marcus froze, his heart slamming against his ribs, confusion clouding his mind. Lena rushed to the door, her scream piercing the morning calm as cops swarmed the sedan, popping the trunk. A burly officer with a shaved head yanked out the Glock, holding it high like a trophy. "Got a weapon," he bellowed, and Marcus's stomach dropped. "That's not mine," he said, his voice steady but tight, his hands raised high. The crowd from 3 nights ago was nothing compared to this. Neighbors peering from windows, phones already recording, whispers of "told you he was trouble" floating through the air. Sheila watched from a block away, leaning against an unmarked car, her arms crossed, a smug twist to her lips. The lead cop, a wiry man with a scar across his cheek, cuffed Marcus again, the steel cold and familiar, and hauled him toward a cruiser. "You're under arrest for illegal possession," he barked, shoving Marcus inside. Lena clutched the doorframe, tears streaking her face as the cars peeled out, leaving dust and silence in their wake. Marcus sat in the precinct's holding cell, the concrete walls damp with mildew, his mind racing. How had this happened? The video was supposed to end this, not bury him deeper. He replayed the stop, the cuffs, the crowd, searching for a clue, but nothing clicked. Meanwhile, Sheila returned to her apartment, flipping on the TV to catch the breaking news. Marcus Holloway, viral victim, now suspect in gun case. She chuckled, cracking open a beer, the foam spilling over her fingers. Victor had already promised to squash the suspension, his influence a spiderweb across the department, and she felt the reins back in her hands. Marcus might have thought he'd won with his little video stunt, but she'd just flipped the board and the game was hers again. Back at home, Lena sank to the floor, her phone buzzing with notifications, the support turning to venom. Knew he was a thug. Cops were right. She clutched Marcus's jacket, the one he'd worn that night, and vowed to fight, but the weight of it crushed her. Marcus, in his cell, stared at the flickering bulb overhead, his calm exterior masking a fire building inside. He'd get out. He'd prove this wrong, but he didn't know Sheila's next move was already in motion, a shadow creeping closer. Want to weigh in? Comment number 1 if you think Marcus deserves justice, hit like if you're rooting for his comeback, and subscribe because this roller coaster's just getting started. Was that gun really his, or is someone pulling strings behind the scenes? Stick around to find out. The sun had barely crested the Atlanta skyline when the raid hit, a thunderclap shattering the quiet of Marcus Holloway's modest 2-story home on Peachtree Lane. It was 4 days after his dashcam video had gone viral, 3 since Sheila Brantley had planted the Glock in his trunk, and now at 6 in the morning, the air buzzed with sirens as 5 squad cars screeched into his driveway, their lights painting the brick facade in strobing red and blue. Marcus jolted awake, his bare feet hitting the cold hardwood as Lena's panicked voice called from downstairs, "Marcus, they're here." He stumbled to the window, peering through the blinds to see a dozen officers spilling out, their boots pounding the earth, guns glinting in the dawn light. His heart thudded, a primal rhythm, as he yanked on a t-shirt, knowing this wasn't a courtesy call. Lena, in her nightgown, clutched the banister, her wide eyes darting between Marcus and the door as it burst open, wood splintering under a battering ram. "Marcus Holloway, hands where we can see them," shouted a beefy cop with a buzz cut, his pistol trained on Marcus as he descended the stairs. Hands raised, his jaw tight. Lena screamed, a raw, guttural sound, as 2 officers shoved past her, one knocking her against the wall, her shoulder slamming, into a framed photo that crashed to the floor, glass shattering. Marcus's voice cut through the chaos, steady but laced with fury. "Leave her alone, I'm coming." The cops swarmed, their shouts overlapping. "On the ground now!" He knelt, the tile cold against his knees, and felt the familiar bite of cuffs snapping around his wrists, tighter this time, the metal grinding into his skin. Across the street, neighbors peeked from porches, some in robes, others with phones already rolling, a silent audience to the storm. Sheila watched from an unmarked sedan half a block away, her buzzed hair hidden under a cap, her lips curling into a satisfied twist as Marcus was dragged out, barefoot and grim-faced, into the glaring light. The search was swift, rehearsed, the cops tearing through the sedan like wolves on a carcass. A wiry officer with a scar across his cheek popped the trunk, his gloved hand pulling out the planted Glock, its black steel catching the sun. "Weapon confirmed," he bellowed, holding it aloft, and the others nodded, their faces set in practiced scowls. Marcus shook his head, his voice rising. "That's not mine. You've got no warrant for this." But the buzz-cut cop smirked, slamming him against the cruiser's hood, the impact jarring his ribs. "Shut it, Holloway. We got a tip. That's all we need." Lena lunged forward, her braids swinging. "You can't do this." But a female officer grabbed her arm, twisting it back until she gasped, tears welling as Marcus was shoved into the back seat, the door slamming shut with a hollow thud. At the precinct, the air was thick with cigarette smoke and the drone of radios, the holding cell a concrete box that smelled of sweat and despair. Marcus sat, his wrists raw, replaying the morning's chaos, his mind a tangle of questions. Who tipped them? How'd they move so fast? He'd beaten the first arrest with the video, thought he'd gained ground. But this felt different, heavier, a noose tightening. Meanwhile, Sheila strutted back into the station, her suspension lifted overnight thanks to Victor Rawls, the deputy chief with a voice like gravel and a handshake that sealed dirty deals. He'd leaned on the captain, a spineless man with a comb-over, spinning a tale of new evidence and public safety. And Sheila was back, her badge gleaming, her smirk sharper than ever. She leaned against a desk, watching Marcus through the cell bars, her arms crossed, savoring the sight of him caged again. But Marcus had an ace up his sleeve, Tanya Brooks, his lawyer, a woman in her late 40s with a voice like thunder and a glare that could melt steel. She stormed into the precinct by noon, her heels clicking on the tile, a stack of papers in her manicured hands. "This is a joke," she snapped at the desk sergeant, a doughy man who shrank under her stare. "No warrant, no probable cause. Just a tip? You're holding my client on nothing." She'd already reviewed the arrest logs, spotted the procedural slip, the tip line call logged without a name, and pounced. By 2 in the afternoon, she was in front of a judge, a wiry old man with a hawkish nose, arguing Marcus's case with fire in her words. "This is harassment, Your Honor. Pure and simple. They've got no chain of custody on that weapon, no fingerprints, nothing tying it to him." The prosecutor, a balding man with a weak chin, stammered, but the judge waved him off, his gavel, tapping lightly. "Released on his own recognizance pending further investigation," he ruled, and Marcus walked out, the precinct doors swinging shut behind him, the humid air a fleeting taste of freedom. He hugged Lena on the steps, her arms trembling around him, her voice a whisper. "We're okay, right?" He nodded, forcing a smile, thinking he'd dodged the bullet, that Tanya's win had bought him time. The neighbors watched, some clapping, others muttering, "Got lucky this time." Marcus felt the weight lift, if only for a moment, believing the system might bend, that the truth still had teeth. But Victor Rawls had other plans. He sat in his corner office, the precinct's top, floor overlooking the city, his meaty hands flipping through Marcus's file, his graying mustache twitching as he schemed. Sheila's call had lit the fuse, but Victor was the dynamite. He picked up his phone, dialing a contact at a local news station, a slimy editor named Chuck with a taste for scandal. "Got a scoop for you," Victor growled. "Marcus Holloway, the victim. He's got a rap sheet a mile long, drugs, theft, the works, I'll send it over." It was a lie, a forged document cooked up in an hour, but Chuck didn't care. He smelled ratings. By nightfall, the story broke. Channel 6's evening broadcast flashing Marcus's face next to a fabricated list of crimes. Possession, assault, grand larceny, dates and charges plucked from thin air. The anchor, a woman with a tight bun and a tighter smile, read the script with relish. "New evidence suggests Marcus Holloway may not be the innocent man his viral video claims." The petition for justice stalled, signatures dropping off as comments shifted. "Always knew he was shady. Cops don't lie for no reason." Marcus sat on his couch, the TV's glow bathing the room in a sickly light. Lena beside him, her hands clenched into fists. "This isn't you," she said. But the damage was done. The public's cheers turned to boos. The tide he'd turned now a tsunami against him. Sheila watched the broadcast from a dive bar across town, the neon sign flickering outside, a beer, bottle sweating in her grip. She toasted the screen, her laugh sharp and bitter, knowing Victor's move had buried Marcus deeper than cuffs ever could. At home, Marcus switched off the TV, the silence heavy, his mind racing. He'd walked free, thought he'd won, but this was a gut punch he hadn't seen coming. The world now saw a criminal, not a victim, and he knew Sheila and her puppet master weren't done. The fight wasn't over, it was just getting uglier, and the next blow would hit harder than he could imagine. The Atlanta sun blazed high overhead, baking the asphalt of Freedom Parkway, as Marcus Holloway stood on a makeshift stage, a microphone trembling slightly in his grip, his navy suit jacket damp with sweat. It was 6 days since Victor Rawls's fake rap sheet had turned the public against him, 5 since his release from the gun charge, and now on this scorching Saturday afternoon, he faced a crowd of 300 souls, a sea of raised fists and homemade signs scrawled with "Justice, now and end the lies." His bruises had faded, but the fire in his chest burned hotter than ever, fueled by the news stations that branded him a thug, the neighbors who now crossed the street to avoid him. Lena stood at his side, her braids glinting in the light, her hand brushing his arm, a silent anchor as he took a deep breath and spoke. "I'm not what they say I am," he began, his voice steady, rising over the murmurs. "I'm a husband, a worker, a man who's been targeted for one reason, the color of my skin." The crowd roared, a wave of sound that crashed against the concrete, fists pumping, phones aloft capturing every word. Marcus felt the energy surge through him, a lifeline after days of suffocation. He pointed to the sky, his tone sharpening. "They stopped me, beat me, framed me, but I'm still here, and I won't stop until the truth stands tall." Cheers erupted, a woman in a red scarf shouting, "Tell it, Marcus!" as others chanted his name, a rhythm that pulsed through the humid air. Tanya Brooks, his lawyer, watched from the sidelines, her arms crossed, a rare smile tugging at her lips. She'd pushed him to speak, to fight back, and now he was, reclaiming his voice one syllable at a time. For the first time in weeks, hope flickered in his chest, a fragile flame he dared to nurture. Maybe this was the turning point. Maybe the city would listen. But across the park, hidden behind tinted windows in an unmarked black SUV, Sheila Brantley and Victor Rawls sat, their eyes locked on the stage, her buzzed hair slick with perspiration, his graying mustache twitching with disdain. Sheila's suspension had been a slap on the wrist. Victor's influence had wiped it clean, and now they stewed, watching Marcus rise like a phoenix from their ashes. "He's getting too loud," Sheila muttered, cracking her knuckles, her hazel eyes narrowing. Victor grunted, his meaty hand tapping the wheel. "Let him crow, makes the fall harder." He'd already made calls, pulled strings, and now he nodded to Sheila. "Time to shut this down." She smirked, dialing a burner. "Phone?" Her voice low as she spoke to a hired thug named Reggie, a wiry ex-con with a scar snaking down his neck. "Do it now, make it messy." Reggie, stationed 2 blocks away, slipped a pistol from his jacket, his grin crooked as he moved into position. Back at the rally, Marcus hit his stride, his words ringing out, "We demand accountability, not just for me, but for every soul, crushed by a system that sees us as less." The crowd swelled, clapping, stomping, a tide of defiance that shook the ground. Lena squeezed his hand, her eyes shining, whispering, "They're with you." He nodded, feeling the weight lift, the lies peeling away under the sun's glare. He raised his fist. "Together we'll break these chains." The roar peaked, a deafening crescendo, and for a moment he believed he'd turned the corner, that this was his victory, his reclaiming. Then it happened. 3 sharp cracks split the air, gunshots echoing off the buildings, not from the stage, but from the park's edge. Reggie's bullets fired high, a signal to chaos. Panic erupted, the crowd scattering like leaves in a storm, screams piercing the heat as people stumbled. Shoving, falling, Marcus dropped the mic, grabbing Lena and pulling her behind the stage, his heart slamming against his ribs. "Stay low," he shouted, his voice lost in the din. Shoes crunched signs into the dirt. A child wailed. A man tripped and didn't get up, his leg twisted at a sickening angle. Sirens wailed in the distance, closing in fast as the dust settled, revealing a toll: 32 injured, a teenage girl clutching a broken arm, an elderly man dazed with blood trickling from his temple. Reggie melted into the chaos, his job done, while Sheila and Victor watched, their SUV idling, her smirk widening. "Perfect," she said, and Victor chuckled. "Blame's on him now." Police swarmed the scene, batons out, barking orders, their eyes landing on Marcus as he shielded Lena, his suit torn, his face streaked with sweat. "Holloway!" a stocky cop with a crew cut bellowed, storming over. "You're under arrest. Inciting a riot." Marcus blinked, disbelief crashing over him. "I was speaking, not shooting." But the cop grabbed his arm, twisting it back, cuffs snapping on as Lena cried out, "He didn't do this." The crowd, fractured and fleeing, offered no defense, some muttering, "He brought this," their faith shaken by the blood on the pavement. Sheila stepped out of the SUV, her boots crunching grass, grinning as Marcus was hauled to a cruiser. Her plan unfolding like clockwork. She'd turned his triumph into a trap, and the city would eat it up. Hours later, Tanya stormed into the precinct, her heels a war drum on the tile, arguing with the sergeant, a lanky man with a nervous tic. "This is insanity. He was the victim, not the instigator." She posted bail with cash from a rally donor, a retired teacher with trembling hands. And by midnight, Marcus walked free, his wrists raw, his spirit battered. Lena clung to him outside, the night air heavy, her voice breaking. "What's happening? To us?" He had no answer, only a sinking dread as he saw the news vans, their lights blinding, reporters shouting, "Marcus Holloway, rally organizer, linked to violence." The broadcast spun a new lie. Sources say Holloway's event turned deadly, a pattern of chaos, and the public swallowed it whole, comments flooding in. "He's a menace, lock him up." Marcus sat in his car, the engine off, staring at the dashboard. The hope he'd felt hours ago a distant memory. Sheila had struck again, harder, bloodier, and he hadn't seen it coming. Victor's voice echoed in her apartment where they, toasted with cheap whiskey, "Told you he's finished." She nodded, her laugh sharp, knowing the city now saw Marcus as a villain, not a victim, and the next blow would bury him deeper still. What do you think about this twist? Comment number 1 if you believe Marcus is being set up. Hit like if you're stunned by this betrayal. And subscribe because this story's about to explode. Can Marcus claw his way back from this nightmare, or is the deck stacked too high? Stay tuned to find out. The Fulton County Courthouse loomed over downtown Atlanta, its gray stone walls baking under a relentless July sun, the air inside thick with humidity and the buzz of restless spectators. Marcus Holloway sat at the defense table, his navy suit pressed but his shoulders tense, the weight of the past week pressing down like a vice. The viral video, the planted gun, the rally turned bloodbath, all roads leading to this moment. Lena sat behind him, her braids pulled back, her hands twisting, a tissue into knots. Her eyes locked on him as if willpower alone could pull him through. Across the room, Sheila Brantley adjusted her uniform, her buzzed hair gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Her smirk faint but unmistakable. She'd walked back into the precinct like nothing happened. Victor Rawles's strings pulling her upright, and now she faced Marcus again, ready to bury him. The courtroom swelled with onlookers, reporters scribbling, activists whispering, the tension a live wire waiting to snap. Judge Clarence Tate, a wiry man with a hawkish nose and silver hair, banged his gavel, silencing the hum, his voice gravelly. "Let's get this moving, counsel. Call your first witness." The prosecutor, a balding man named Harold Pitts with a weak chin and a nervous tic, stood smoothing his tie. "The state calls Officer Sheila Brantley." She strode to the stand, her boots clicking on the tile, her posture rigid, swearing. In with a hand on the Bible she didn't believe in. Pitts cleared his throat. "Officer Brantley, walk us through the night of July 3rd when you encountered Marcus Holloway." Sheila leaned into the mic, her voice smooth as oil. "I was patrolling Buckhead around 8 p.m., saw the defendant driving slow, scoping out storefronts. I pulled him over. He got aggressive, shoved me, resisted arrest. I had to use force to subdue him." Her words dripped with rehearsed sincerity, her hazel eyes flicking to the jury, 12 faces ranging from bored to skeptical. Marcus clenched his fists under the table, his jaw tight, knowing every word was a lie. He hadn't shoved her, hadn't resisted, but the cuffs had left marks and the crowd had cheered her on. Tanya Brooks, his lawyer, sat beside him, her pen tapping a rhythm on her legal pad, her sharp eyes tracking Sheila's every move. Pitts nodded. "And this aggression, it matches the pattern of the rally incident?" Sheila straightened. "Yes, sir, he's got a temper, stirred up that crowd, caused a riot. People got hurt because of him." The jury shifted, a few nodding, others frowning, the room's air growing heavier. Pitts sat satisfied, passing the baton to Tanya, who rose like a storm cloud, her heels a quiet threat on the floor. "Officer Brantley, let's talk facts, not stories." Tanya adjusted her glasses, her voice cutting through the stillness. "You say my client attacked you, resisted, but I've got something you might have forgotten about, a dash cam." She clicked a remote, and the courtroom screen flickered to life. the footage from Marcus's car rolling, Sheila's voice barking, "Hands on the car!" Marcus complying, her hands slamming him down, no shove, no fight, just her rage. Gasps rippled through the gallery, a juror with a grey beard leaning forward, eyes wide. Sheila's smirk faltered, her fingers curling on the stand. "That's edited," she snapped. But Tanya pressed, "Is it? We've got the raw file, certified, no cuts. Want to explain why you lied under oath?" Sheila's mouth opened, then shut, her face flushing as Tanya turned to the judge. "Your Honor, this disproves the assault claim. I move to dismiss it." Pitt stammered, "Objection, relevance." But Tate waved him off. "Overruled. I've seen enough. Assault charge dismissed." Marcus exhaled, a shudder of relief shaking his frame. Lena's hand brushing his shoulder, her whispered, "Yes," barely audible over the murmurs. The gallery buzzed, reporters scribbling faster, a woman in a yellow dress clapping before a bailiff hushed her. Sheila stepped down, her boots stomping harder, her glare slicing toward Marcus. But he met it, unflinching, thinking this was it, the first crack in their wall. Tanya sat, her smile tight, whispering, "One down, more to go." And for a moment the courtroom felt lighter, the truth of fleeting Victor. But Victor Rawls wasn't in the room. He was across town, in a smoky diner off Peachtree, his meaty, hands wrapped around a coffee mug, his greying mustache twitching as he schemed. Sheila's text had hit his phone mid-testimony, "She's killing us," and he'd already moved, his plan a venomous snake coiled to strike. Victor dialed a number, his voice low. "Eddie, you're up." Eddie Tatum, a jittery pawn shop owner with a patchy beard and a gambling debt Victor owned, sat in his cluttered back office, sweating through a stained shirt. "You sure about this, Rawls?" he croaked, but Victor growled, "You owe me, say what I told you or you're done." Eddie nodded to no one, pocketing the cash Victor had slipped him earlier, $500 to lie. By 3 p.m., Pitts called Eddie to the stand, his shoes scuffing the floor as he swore in, his eyes darting to Victor's empty seat in the back. "State your name," Pitts said, and Eddie mumbled, "Edward Tatum, I run Tatum's Pawn on 10th Street. Pitts paced, "Tell us about Marcus Holloway." Eddie licked his lips. "Came into my shop June 29th, waving that Glock. Said he'd shoot me if I didn't buy it. I ran him off." The courtroom erupted, whispers turning to shouts, a juror with a buzz cut gasping, "What?" Marcus's head snapped up, his voice breaking free. "That's a lie. I've never been." There Tate banged his gavel, "Order." But the damage was done. Tanya leapt up, "Objection, no evidence, no corroboration." Pitts smirked, "Witness testimony is evidence, counsel." And Tate sighed, "Sustained, but I'll allow it. Jury will weigh credibility." Tanya grilled Eddie, "Where's the security footage? Police report?" Eddie squirmed, "Cameras." Droken didn't call cops, too scared, his story flimsy as wet paper. But the jury didn't care, their eyes narrowed at Marcus, doubt creeping in. Sheila watched from the prosecution's side, her smirk returning. Victor's puppet had danced perfectly, and the room tilted against Marcus again. Marcus sank into his chair, his breath shallow, the dismissal a hollow win now, Eddie's lie a fresh chain around his neck. Lena gripped the railing, her knuckles white, whispering, "He's making it up." But the jury didn't hear, their faces hardening, some scribbling notes, others glaring. Tanya sat, her pen still, her voice low. "We'll fight this, but it's bad." Pitts rested his case and Tate adjourned for the day, his gavel a dull thud, the crowd spilling out, buzzing with "He's guilty" and "Knew it." Marcus stood, his suit wrinkled, his calm cracking. He'd beaten the assault, thought he'd cleared a hurdle, but Victor's move had slammed a new door shut, a weapons charge now loomed, heavier, uglier, and the fight was far from over. Sheila met Victor later in that diner, her beer clinking his coffee. "Told you I'd get him," she said, and he nodded. "Round one's ours, round two's gonna hurt more." Marcus Holloway slumped on his living room couch, the late July heat seeping through the cracked window of his Atlanta home, the faint hum of cicadas outside a mocking lullaby to the chaos of the past week. The courtroom win, stripping away Sheila. Brantley's assault charge felt like a distant echo, drowned out by Eddie Tatum's lie about the Glock, a shadow that clung to him like damp rot. Lena knelt beside him, her braids brushing his arm, her voice a quiet lifeline. "We've got to keep going, Marcus. They can't break us." He nodded, his broad shoulders sagging, the navy suit jacket he'd worn to court now draped over a chair, stained with sweat and despair. The TV flickered silently, muted news clips replaying the rally's carnage, his name tied to it like a noose, but tonight he wasn't alone. A faint spark flickered in his chest. The community hadn't fully turned away, not yet. Earlier that day, a local activist group, Justice Rising, had knocked on his door, a trio led by a wiry woman named Marla, with a shaved head and a voice like a megaphone. "We saw the video, Marcus," she'd said, her eyes fierce. "We know they're lying, we're with you." They'd handed him a check, $2,000 from small donations, crumpled bills and coins collected at vigils, a lifeline to keep Tanya Brooks fighting in court. Marcus had shaken their hands, his grip firm, gratitude swelling in his throat. "This means everything," he'd told them, and Marla had grinned. "We're just starting, they won't silence us." Lena had baked cornbread, the kitchen, warm with the scent, and they'd sat plotting, Marcus promising Lena, "We'll rebuild, I'll clear my name, we're stronger than this." For the first time in days, he believed it. The money a shield, the support a sword. He thought the tide might turn, that he'd protect his family from the storm Sheila and Victor had unleashed. But Sheila wasn't resting. She sat in her cramped apartment, the blinds slanted shut, a fan rattling in the corner as she scrolled through Marcus's life on her laptop, her buzzed hair damp, her hazel eyes glinting with spite. Victor Rawls lounged across from her, his meaty frame spilling over a folding chair, his greying moustache twitching as he sipped a beer. "He's getting cocky," he growled, nodding at the screen, Justice Rising's Facebook page glowing with posts about Marcus, hero of Atlanta and fight the frame-up. Sheila's fingers tightened on the mouse. "Not for long," she said, her voice a razor's edge. She'd lost the assault charge, but the weapons lie stuck. And now this. Support threatened her grip. She wouldn't let it stand. Victor smirked. "Hit him where it hurts, his precious little family." Sheila nodded, her plan already forming, a venomous seed taking root. That night, while Marcus slept fitfully beside Lena, Sheila struck. She hacked into a dark web forum, her skills rusty but sharp enough, and posted Lena's workplace, Sunshine Daycare, a cheerful spot 5 miles from home where she taught toddlers shapes and songs. "Wife of felon Marcus Holloway works here," she typed, her gloved fingers. Swift, harboring a criminal, shut it down. By morning, the post had spread, racist trolls and bots amplifying it. A digital wildfire. "Fire her! Boycott this dump! She's as bad as him!" Sunshine's phone rang off the hook, threats pouring in. "We'll burn it down," one hissed. "Your kids ain't safe." The owner, a nervous woman named Claire with grey curls, called Lena at 7, her voice shaking. "I can't keep you, not with this. We're closing today." Lena stood in the kitchen, phone slipping from her hand, crashing onto the tile. Her job gone, their savings a thin thread now snapped. Marcus woke to her sobs, stumbling downstairs in boxers, his heart sinking as she recounted the call. "They're after me now," she choked, her fierce eyes red-rimmed. "Because of you, because of them." He pulled her close, her tears soaking his chest, rage boiling in his gut. "I'll fix this," he swore, but the words felt hollow. The activist money wouldn't cover rent, not with Lena out of work. He stepped outside, the humid air slapping his face, and saw it, a brick on the porch, jagged and heavy. A racial slur scrawled across it in red paint, the letters dripping like blood. Glass crunched under his bare feet, the front window shattered, curtains fluttering in the breeze. A message from Sheila's unseen army. "You're next." Neighbors peeked out, some horrified, others nodding. "Told you he's trouble." And Marcus felt the world shrink, his family now the bullseye. Lena swept the glass, her hands trembling, while Marcus called Tanya, his voice low. "They've gone too far, they're hitting Lena." Tanya's response was sharp. "Document it. Every shard, every threat, we'll use it." But her tone carried a warning. The case was slipping. The jury's eyes already cold. Justice Rising posted support. "Stand with Marcus and Lena." But the trolls drowned it out. Criminals deserve nothing, the tide shifting faster now. Marcus boarded the window with plywood, his hammer striking harder than needed. Each nail a vow to fight. He'd thought the rally was the bottom, that the community's cash was his lifeline, but Sheila and Victor had ripped it away, turning his home into a battlefield, his wife into collateral damage. Victor met Sheila at a gas station lot that evening, the air thick with exhaust, his SUV idling as she leaned against her cruiser. "Daycare's toast," she said, her smirk sharp. "Next we crush his spirit." Victor chuckled, his beefy hand slapping the wheel. "He's got nowhere to run, keep squeezing." They'd turned Marcus's hope into ash, the brick a warning shot, the job loss a gut punch, and they weren't done. The courtroom loomed, and their next move would draw blood. Marcus stood on his porch, the night pressing in, the slurs, red paint a scar on his mind. He'd rebuilt once, thought he'd protect Lena, but now the enemy was inside his walls and the fight was personal, uglier, deadlier than ever. What's your take on this brutal twist? Comment number 1 if you think Sheila's gone too far. Hit like if you're raging for Marcus and Lena, and subscribe because this war's heating up fast. Can Marcus shield his family from this onslaught, or will the next strike break them for good? Keep watching to see. The Atlanta night hung heavy over Marcus Holloway's home, the plywood over his shattered window creaking in the humid breeze, a faint reminder of the brick that had crashed through days ago, its red-painted slur still etched in his mind. Inside, the living room glowed with the soft flicker of a lamp. Marcus sat hunched over a coffee table, his navy suit jacket discarded, his T-shirt clinging to his broad shoulders as he pored over notes with Lena, her braids framing a face tight with worry. The loss of her daycare job had gutted their savings, the activist funds from Justice Rising barely covering Tanya Brooks's retainer, but tonight a sliver of hope dangled before them, a lead that could turn the tide. Marcus's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Meet me midnight, old warehouse on Howell Mill, got dirt on Brantley." His pulse quickened, his eyes meeting Lena's. "This could be it," he said, his voice low but alive. "Someone's breaking ranks." Lena frowned, her fingers twisting the edge of her sweater. "Could be a trap, Marcus, after everything." He nodded, knowing the risk, the planted gun, the rally's blood, the trolls, but he'd faced worse and won. He had to chase this. "I'll be careful," he promised, kissing her forehead, her skin warm against his lips, and grabbed his keys, the sedan's engine rumbling as he pulled out, the city's neon lights streaking past. The warehouse loomed at the edge of town, a rusted hulk swallowed by shadows, its broken windows gaping like empty eyes. Marcus parked a block away, his sneakers silent on the cracked pavement, and slipped inside, the air thick with dust and the tang of metal. A figure waited in the gloom, a young cop named Jamal Tate, barely 25, his uniform crisp, his dark eyes darting nervously. "You, Holloway," he whispered, and Marcus nodded. "What have you got?" Jamal pulled a recorder from his pocket, his hands trembling. "Caught this last week, Rawls bragging to Brantley about framing you, the gun, the rally, all of it." He pressed play, Victor's gravelly voice crackling through. "Holloway's done? That Glock was a stroke of genius, Sheila, and the rally?" "Pure chaos, my guy Reggie's worth every dime." Marcus's breath caught, his fists clenching. This was gold, raw proof to blow their lies apart. "Why risk this?" he asked, and Jamal shifted. "Joined the force to help, not hurt. They're dirty, man, I can't stomach it." Marcus studied him, the rookie's earnest face, the sweat beading on his brow, and decided to trust. "Get this to my lawyer, Tanya Brooks, we'll bury them." Jamal nodded, slipping the recorder back. "Tomorrow, precinct parking lot, noon." They parted, Marcus's heart pounding with a rare thrill. He had them. He'd win this round, or so he thought. The next morning broke with a muggy haze, Marcus pacing his kitchen, sipping coffee Lena had brewed, its bitter edge grounding him as he replayed Jamal's words. "If this holds," he told her, "we're back in the fight. Sheila's toast." Lena managed a smile, fragile but real. "Maybe. We'll get our life back." And he clung to that, imagining the courtroom, the jury's gasps, Sheila's fall. At noon, he met Jamal in the precinct lot, the sun glaring off windshields, the recorder handed over in a quick handshake. "You're doing right," Marcus said, and Jamal nodded. "Hope it's enough." Tanya took it that afternoon, her office a clutter of files, her sharp eyes lighting up as she listened. "This is dynamite, Marcus. We'll play it in court. They're done." He left her office lighter, the weight of weeks lifting, believing he'd turned the corner, that justice was clawing its way out. But Sheila wasn't blind. She'd clocked Jamal's jitters at the precinct, his sidelong glances, and her gut screamed betrayal. She tailed him that night, her cruiser a shadow on his beat-up Honda, catching him slip into a corner store. She cornered him in the alley behind, her boots crunching gravel, her voice a hiss. "You're talking, rookie. Who to?" Jamal froze, his lanky frame shrinking. "Nobody," he lied. But Sheila grabbed his collar, slamming him against the brick. "Don't play me, I'll end you." She dug through his pockets, finding a burner phone, no recorder, but enough she knew. Victor got the call, his meaty hand crushing a soda can. "He's flipped. Fix it." Sheila smirked. "Oh, I will," and dug into Jamal's file, a failed drug test from his academy days. Buried by a favor, now her leverage. She hit Jamal at dawn, his apartment a cramped box off Ponce de Leon, banging the door until he opened, bleary-eyed. "What the hell?" She shoved the test results in his face. "Positive for coke, kid. You're done unless you flip back. Testify Holloway bribed you or this goes public. Career over, jail time." Jamal's knees buckled, his voice a whisper. "I can't." But Sheila leaned close, her breath sour. "You will tomorrow, court, or you're a ghost." He nodded, broken, the recorder still with Tanya, but his courage gone. Sheila had snapped him like a twig, and Marcus didn't see it coming. The courtroom hummed the next day. Marcus at the defense table, his suit crisp, hope flickering as Tanya prepped the recorder. "We've got them," she whispered, and he believed her. Pitts called Jamal to the stand, a surprise witness, his uniform wrinkled, his eyes hollow as he swore in. "Tell us about Marcus Holloway," Pitts said, and Jamal swallowed, his voice shaky. "He bribed me. $500. Said to lie. About Brantley and Rawls, make up some recording. I took it, I'm sorry." The room gasped, Marcus's head snapped up. "That's not true," he shouted, but Tate banged his gavel. "Quiet!" Tanya leapt. "Objection, no proof, he's lying." But Pitts waved a forged receipt. "Here's the payment." And Tate sighed. "Overruled, proceed." Jamal slumped, avoiding Marcus's stare, the jury's faces hardening. A woman with a tight bun scribbling furiously. A man with a goatee nodding. Knew he was dirty. Marcus sank back, his chest hollow, the recorder useless now. Jamal's flip, a knife in his gut, he'd trusted, thought he'd won. But Sheila had outplayed him, her smirk from the gallery cutting deeper than the cuffs ever had. Tanya grilled. "Jamal, where's the money? Witnesses?" But he mumbled, "Spent it, nobody saw." His story thin but believed. The jury bought it, their eyes cold, Marcus's credibility ash. Lena gripped the railing behind, her breath ragged. "He's scared," she whispered, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. Court adjourned, the buzz deafening. "Bribed a cop, typical. He's finished." And Tanya turned to Marcus, her voice grim. "We're losing them fast. That tape's our last shot." Sheila met Victor at a dive bar that night. The jukebox blaring, her beer clinking his whiskey. "Told you I'd break him," she said, and Victor laughed. "Kid folded like paper, next move's bigger." Marcus sat in his car outside, the engine off, staring at the stars. Jamal's words a loop in his head. He'd had them, the proof, the win. But betrayal had snatched it away, Sheila's grip tightening, and the next blow would be a sledgehammer. He felt it coming, dark and unstoppable. The Atlanta skyline shimmered under a bruised dusk sky, the air thick with humidity, and the faint tang of gasoline as Marcus Holloway stood outside the Fulton County Courthouse, his navy suit jacket slung over his shoulder, his broad frame silhouetted against the gathering crowd. It was 3 days since Jamal Tate's betrayal had torched his credibility in court, 2 since Lena had taped cardboard over their shattered window, and now, on this sweltering evening, supporters rallied once more, 100 strong, their voices. A jagged chorus of "Free Marcus and End the Lies," Justice Rising had called it, Marla's megaphone voice booming, "We won't let them bury him." Marcus felt the weight of their faith, a lifeline after Jamal's knife, and stepped forward, his hands raised. "I need you to hear me," he shouted, his tone raw. "I didn't bribe anyone. I didn't shoot. I'm begging for peace, for truth." The crowd hushed, then erupted, fists pumping, a woman in a green hijab clapping, a teen with a skateboard nodding. "We believe you." Lena stood beside him, her braids catching the fading light, her fierce eyes scanning the faces, whispering, "They're still with us!" Across the street, counter-protesters gathered 50 deep, bussed in by Victor Rawles's cronies, their signs venomous, "Lock him up," and "Thug life," their jeers a low growl. Marcus pressed on, "I've been framed, my family's been hit, but I won't break, not with you here." His voice cracked, emotion spilling out, and the supporters roared, a swell of defiance that echoed off the courthouse's stone facade, cameras rolling, a local news feed streaming live, his plea trending, "Marcus speaks," a fragile thread of trust reknitting. He thought he'd clawed something back, that this could shift the jury, the city, everything. But Sheila Brantley and Victor Rawles watched from a rooftop 2 blocks away, her buzzed hair hidden under a cap, his meaty hands gripping binoculars, their unmarked SUV parked below. "He's rallying them again," Sheila spat, her hazel eyes glinting with fury. Jamal's flip had wounded Marcus, but not enough. This crowd was a slap in her face. Victor's mustache twitched. "Time to end it," he growled, dialing a burner phone. "Reggie, light it up." Reggie, the wiry thug from the rally, crouched in a vacant lot a block from the courthouse, a duffel bag at his feet, stuffed with homemade explosives Victor had sourced from a shady dealer. "On it?" he rasped, his scar twitching as he set. The timer 3 minutes, then slipped away, a ghost in the dusk. Sheila smirked. "This'll shut them up," and Victor nodded. "He's done tonight." Back at the courthouse, Marcus wrapped up, "We'll fight in court, on the streets, anywhere, until justice stands." The crowd cheered, a deafening wave, phones flashing, the live feed spiking. 10,000 viewers and climbing. He stepped back, hugging Lena, her arms tight around him. "You did it," she said, and he exhaled, believing it. The counter-protesters' boos drowned out, his spirit lifting. He'd calmed the storm, turned despair into fire. Then the world shattered. A deafening boom ripped through the air, the vacant lot erupting in a fireball, orange and black plumes clawing the sky, shrapnel raining down, screams piercing the chaos as the crowd scattered. Marcus grabbed Lena, pulling her to the ground. "Get down!" he yelled, his ears ringing, dust choking his lungs. The blast killed 3 instantly. A young man in a hoodie shredded by metal, an older woman with a cane incinerated, a child's sneaker lying alone in the wreckage, blood pooling on the asphalt. 30 more injured, limbs twisted, faces burned. The courthouse steps a battlefield. Marcus crawled to Lena, her forehead bleeding from flying glass. "You okay?" he gasped, and she nodded, dazed. "What happened?" Sirens wailed, cops swarming, their boots crunching debris. A stocky officer with a crew cut spotting Marcus. "Holloway, you're done," he roared, yanking him up, cuffs snapping on. "Manslaughter, you caused this." Marcus shook his head. "I didn't, I was pleading for peace." But the cop shoved him toward a cruiser, the crowd too broken to argue, some weeping, others fleeing, the counter-protesters cheering, "Told you he's a killer." Sheila watched from the rooftop, her smirk stretching wide. "Beautiful," she muttered, Victor chuckling. "He's a murderer now, no bail this time." They'd turned his plea into a massacre, Reggie's bomb a masterstroke. The news vans, already spinning it. Explosion at Holloway rally, 3 dead. The live feed cutting to panicked anchors, pattern of violence escalates. Marcus sat in the cruiser, his wrists bleeding under the cuffs, his mind reeling. He'd begged for calm, rebuilt trust, but this was a nightmare he couldn't wake from. The city saw a monster, not a man, and his bail was revoked, the judges. Order swift, too dangerous, locking him in a cell, the bars cold against his back. Tanya stormed the precinct at midnight, her heels a war cry. This is insanity. He was the target, not the bomber. But the sergeant, a burly man with a scar, shrugged. "Evidence says otherwise, Counselor. Witnesses saw him rile them up." She fought, but the system held. Marcus caged, his suit torn, his spirit fracturing. Lena bandaged at home, alone, the activist support vanishing. "Too risky," Marla texted, pulling back. Sheila visited his cell, her boots echoing, leaning, close to the bars, her voice a venomous purr. "Told you I'd win, Holloway. You're rotting here. Enjoy it." He stared back, silent, his eyes burning, but inside he felt the cracks widen. He'd thought he'd risen, only to fall harder. Sheila's grip iron, Victor's shadow endless. Marcus sat, the cell's damp air seeping into his bones, replaying. The blast, the screams, the blood. He'd begged for peace, thought he'd won them over, but they'd turned it into death. 3 lives gone, his name a curse. He didn't know how to climb out, didn't know if he could. Sheila and Victor toasted in a dive bar, her beer clinking his whiskey. "He's broken," she said, and Victor grinned. "Not yet, next one finishes him." The fight was a war now, and Marcus was bleeding, the next strike looming like a guillotine. What's your stance on this gut-wrenching turn? Comment number 1 if you think Marcus is innocent in this carnage. Hit like if this explosion shocked you speechless, and subscribe, because this saga's far from over. Will Marcus find a way to fight from behind bars, or has Sheila finally crushed him? Don't miss what's coming next. The Fulton County jail cell was a concrete coffin, its walls slick with mildew, the air stale with the musk of despair, as Marcus Holloway sat on a metal bench, his navy suit replaced by a faded orange jumpsuit, his broad shoulders slumped under. The weight of 3 days behind bars. The explosion at the courthouse rally still echoed in his skull, the fireball's roar, the screams of the dying, 3 lives snuffed out, 30 wounded, and his name branded as the cause. Manslaughter charges. Chaining him here, bail revoked. Lena's bandaged face haunted him. Her last words before he was dragged away. "We'll fight this," a vow he clung to like a fraying rope. Tanya Brooks, his lawyer, had been relentless, digging through the wreckage of his case, and now, in the dim glow of a flickering bulb, Marcus replayed her call from yesterday. "Found something big, Jamal's tape. It's our shot." Her voice a lifeline piercing the gloom, he dared to hope. Maybe this could free him. Tanya had worked through the night. Her office a warren of files and coffee cups, her sharp eyes bloodshot as she pieced it together. The recorder Jamal Tate had handed Marcus before his betrayal. Victor Rawls's voice confessing, "Holloway's done. That Glock was a stroke of genius, Sheila, and the rally, pure chaos. My guy Reggie's worth every dime." She'd tracked. Fight back. The original still in evidence from Marcus's first arrest, untouched by Sheila's reach, a miracle in a system rigged against them. By noon she stormed the courthouse, her heels a battle drum filing an emergency motion. "New evidence, Your Honor, it clears my client." And Judge Tate, his hawkish nose twitching, granted a hearing, the prosecution scrambling, Harold Pitts's weak chin quivering as he protested. "This is last-minute nonsense," but Tate's gavel silenced him. "We'll hear it tomorrow." The courtroom buzzed the next day, August heat seeping through the windows. The gallery packed with reporters, activists, and gawkers, their whispers a low hum as Marcus shuffled in, cuffs clanking, his jumpsuit stark against the wood-paneled walls. Lena sat in the front row, her forehead still bandaged, her fierce eyes locked on him, willing him strength. Sheila Brantley sat with Pitts, her buzzed hair gleaming, her smirk gone, replaced by a tight-lipped scowl. She knew something was up, felt the shift, but not the blow coming. Tanya stood, her voice thunder. "Your Honor, we have a recording." Deputy Chief Victor Rawls admitting to framing Marcus Holloway, the gun, the rally chaos, all of it orchestrated. She clicked the player, the static crackling. Then Victor's gravelly growl filled the room. "Holloway's done," followed by Sheila's laugh. "He's ours now." The jury gasped, a woman with a tight bun dropping her pen, a man with a goatee leaning forward, eyes wide. The gallery erupted, shouts of "liar" and crooks bouncing off the walls, Tate banging his gavel. "Order." Pitts leapt up. "Objection, authenticity unverified." But Tanya countered, "It's from evidence, chain of custody intact, check the logs." Tate nodded. "I'll allow it." And Marcus felt his chest loosen, a breath he hadn't known he'd held escaping. The jury's faces softened, doubt creeping in. He glanced at Lena, her hand clutching her throat, tears brimming. They had them, he was sure. Freedom was close, he could taste it. Sheila's face paled, her fingers digging into the table, but Victor wasn't there, he was moving. A predator in the dark, unwilling to let this stand. By 3 p.m. the hearing broke, Tate ordering Sheila's suspension pending review. "Serious allegations," he intoned, and Marcus was released, no bail. "Pending retrial, evidence warrants it," the judge ruled, Pitts slumping, defeated. Marcus walked out. the courthouse steps warm under his sneakers, Lena rushing to him, her arms wrapping tight. "We did it," she whispered, her voice breaking. He hugged her back, the jumpsuit swapped for jeans Tanya had brought, the air sweet. With possibility he thought he'd won, that the tape had shattered their lies. The jury's gasps echoing in his ears, a victory carved from blood and ash. They drove home, the sedan's hum a quiet hymn, Lena's hand in his. "We're coming back," he said, and she nodded, believing it too, the nightmare lifting, if only for a moment. But Victor Rawls wasn't idle. He'd slipped out during the hearing, his SUV roaring to the precinct, his meaty hands white-knuckling the wheel, fury boiling in his gut. That tape was a gut punch, Sheila's suspension a bruise on his empire. He wouldn't let it stand. He stormed the evidence locker, a dank basement room, the night guard a rookie he owned with a $50 bribe. "Look away," he growled, and the kid did, trembling as Victor rifled through boxes, finding the recorder's original, its plastic casing scratched but intact. He didn't hesitate, dousing it with lighter fluid from his pocket, the fumes sharp, and struck a match, the flame licking up, the tape melting into a puddle of black goo, evidence gone, ash drifting to the concrete floor. He smirked, brushing his greying mustache. "Try proving it now," and slipped out, the precinct none the wiser, the guard too scared to talk. The next morning, court reconvened, Tanya striding in, confident. "We'll play the original, Your Honor, seal this case." But Pitt stood, his smirk oily. "No original exists, evidence locker fire last night accidental, only a copy left, inadmissible hearsay." Tanya froze. "That's impossible." But Tate sighed. "Show me the chain, counsel." And she couldn't. The log showed it signed out, then burned. A freak mishap. The jury's eyes narrowed, Pitt's pouncing. "Tampering, Your Honor. Holloway's." Desperate. Tate rubbed his temples. "Without the original, it's out, manslaughter stays." And Marcus sank, his breath stolen, Lena gripping the railing. "No," she mouthed, the room tilting. Sheila's suspension lifted. "Insufficient." "Proof," Tate ruled, her smirk back, sharper, deadlier. Marcus sat, stunned. The jumpsuit swapped back for cuffs, the retrial a noose tightening. He'd walked free for hours, hugged Lena, tasted hope. But Victor's fire had torched it. The jury's doubt returned, a man with a buzz cut muttering, "Shady," a woman with glasses nodding, "Can't trust him." Tanya turned, her voice low. "They've got the system, Marcus, but we're not done." But he barely heard. The cell loomed again, Sheila strutting past, her boots a victory march. "Back where you belong," she hissed, and he stared, hollow, the win a mirage, the confession a ghost. 3 dead still on his name. He'd risen only to crash harder. Victor's shadow a wall he couldn't climb. At home, Lena wept, the cardboard window rattling in the wind, the activist funds dry, justice rising silent, the fight slipping away. Marcus sat in lockup, the bulb flickering, his mind a storm. He'd had them, the truth in his hands, but they'd burned it. Sheila and Victor unbowed, their next move a blade he couldn't dodge. He felt it coming, sharper, final. The Atlanta dawn broke grey and heavy, a thick fog curling through the streets, as Marcus Holloway sat on a sagging cot in his Fulton County jail cell, the orange jumpsuit chafing his skin, his broad shoulders hunched after a sleepless night, haunted by the courtroom's latest blow. The recorder, his lifeline, had melted in Victor Rawls's fire, the manslaughter charges snapping back like a steel trap, 3 deaths pinned on him, his brief taste of freedom a cruel tease. Lena's voice echoed from her last visit. "I'm still here," but the weight of her words couldn't lift the bars. Tanya Brooks had fought for bail, her sharp heels pacing the precinct, and yesterday she'd won, a sympathetic judge with a tired face ruling, $5,000, he's no flight risk, swayed by the tape's echo, even if it was inadmissible. Marcus walked out at noon, the humid air a shock after the cell's damp chill, Lena's arms a fleeting refuge, but he knew Sheila Brantley and Victor weren't done, not by a long shot. That afternoon, Tanya booked him on a local podcast. Truth, Unleashed, hosted by a gravel-voiced man named Darius with a knack for cutting through noise. "You're trending again, Marcus," she said, her eyes fierce. Use it. The studio was a cramped box off Peachtree, wires snaking across the floor. Darius's mic a battered relic, but his audience was 50,000 strong, live streaming to a city on edge. Marcus sat, his navy suit jacket borrowed from Lena's. "Brother," his voice steady, "I've been stopped, framed, bombed, my wife's been targeted, but I'm not the monster they paint. That tape was real, they burned it to bury me." Darius leaned in. "You're saying Rawls and Brantley rigged this?" Marcus nodded. "Every step, the gun, the rally, the explosion, they're cops, but they're criminals." The chat exploded. "He's telling it. Believe him." Views climbing, donations trickling in. $5, $10, $100. Justice rising, texting, "We're back, funds incoming." By nightfall, the podcast hit 200,000 listens. National outlets picking it up. Atlanta man alleges police conspiracy. A senator from Georgia tweeting, "Looking into this, DOJ might too." Marcus felt the ground shift. Lena beside him on the couch, her bandaged forehead catching the TV's glow. "You're untouchable now," she said. And he wanted to believe it. The tide turning, the city waking up, he thought he'd built. A shield, that Sheila and Victor couldn't touch him with the world watching. Donations poured in, $1,000 by midnight, enough for Tanya to push harder. "We'll force a retrial," she vowed. And Marcus slept. His first real rest. In weeks dreaming of justice, not jail. But Victor Rawls wasn't sleeping. He sat in his precinct office, the blinds shut, his meaty hands flipping through fake wanted flyers, Marcus's face plastered with "armed and dangerous," a lie he'd printed an hour ago, his graying, mustache twitching as he dialed Sheila. "He's loud again, time to hunt." Sheila took the call in her apartment, her buzzed hair damp from a shower, her hazel eyes glinting with malice. "Podcast, huh? Let's give them a show." She'd seen the senator's tweet, felt the heat, but she thrived on it. Victor's. Flyers were the spark. She'd light the fire. By morning, she'd spread them, slipping stacks to a biker bar off Marietta Street, a den of roughnecks with swastika tattoos and short fuses. "Holloway's a killer, hiding in plain sight," she whispered to a hulking man named Duke, his beard braided, his fists scarred. "Spread the word." Duke grinned, pocketing cash. And by noon the flyers were everywhere, taped to poles, stuffed in mailboxes, a vigilante call, "Get him before he gets us." Sheila watched from her cruiser, parked near Marcus's street, her smirk sharp, knowing the mob would bite. That evening Marcus stepped out, the air sticky, heading to meet Tanya with the latest donation totals, his sedan parked 2 blocks away, a precaution after the brick. The street was quiet, too quiet until it wasn't. A roar of engines shattered the dusk, 6 bikes tearing around the corner, Duke leading, his eyes wild. "There he is," he bellowed, spotting Marcus. The flyers had worked, a dozen more men, spilling from a pickup, pipes and bats in hand. "Killer," they screamed, closing in. Marcus bolted, his sneakers pounding pavement, his heart slamming. "I'm not armed," he yelled, but they didn't care. A bottle smashed at his feet, glass spraying. He ducked into an alley, the walls tight, the air sour with trash. But they followed, boots thundering, a pipe swinging, cracking his shoulder, pain exploding, blood soaking his shirt. He stumbled, fell, rolled. Their shouts a feral chorus, "End him!" Duke's bat grazed his skull, stars bursting in his vision. He kicked out, catching a knee, buying seconds, crawling behind a dumpster, his breath ragged, his body screaming. They beat the metal. "Come out, coward!" Until sirens wailed, faint but growing. Someone had called, the mob scattering, bikes roaring off, leaving Marcus bloody, broken, his sedan torched in the chaos, flames licking the sky, a charred husk. By the time cops arrived, Sheila watched from her cruiser, her grin wide, then stepped out, striding over as officers hauled Marcus up. "Public disturbance," she barked. "Cuff him." Her boots crunching glass, the cops obeying, their faces blank. "He started." "It," one muttered, believing the flyers, Marcus too weak to argue. His shoulder throbbing, his head spinning, the cuffs cold, familiar. Lena rushed to the scene, her scream cutting the night. "Let him go." But the cops shoved her back, Marcus in the cruiser, his blood smearing the seat, Sheila leaning close. "Thought you were big now, huh? Not anymore." He stared, his eyes burning through pain. "You won't win," he he rasped, but she laughed. Slamming the door, the precinct looming again, his bail revoked. Too volatile, a judge ruled by phone, swayed by Sheila's report. Mob attacked him, he provoked it. Tanya arrived, her voice a roar. This is assault, not his fault. But the system held Marcus locked up, his body bruised, his spirit fraying, the podcast's glow snuffed out, the senator silent, donations stalled. Too risky, a donor texted, pulling back. Marcus sat in his cell, the cot creaking, blood crusted on his lip. The mob's shouts echoing, he'd risen, spoken, thought he'd built armor. But Sheila and Victor had unleashed a beast, his car ash, his body battered, his name filth again, Sheila gloating from the hall, her shadow a taunt, Victor's flyers a death knell. He'd thought he was untouchable, but they'd hunted him down, the next strike a promise he couldn't outrun. The Fulton County Courthouse simmered under a late August sun, its stone walls radiating heat, as Marcus Holloway shuffled into the courtroom, his wrists raw from cuffs, his orange jumpsuit swapped for a borrowed grey suit that hung loose on his battered frame. The mob attack 2 nights ago had left him bruised, his shoulder throbbing. A gash on his scalp scabbed over, but his eyes burned with a quiet fire, fueled by Tanya Brooks's late-night promise. We've got something, Marcus. Hold on. The gallery buzzed, thinner now. The activists scared off by the sedan's ashes, the reporters still hungry for blood. Lena in the front row, her bandaged forehead a stark reminder of their war, her hands clenched, praying this was the end. Sheila Brantley sat with Harold Pitts, her buzzed hair slick with sweat, her uniform crisp, her smirk a thin line. She'd crushed Marcus's podcast surge, thought the mob had sealed it, but Tanya's glint unnerved her. Something was coming. Judge. Clarence Tate banged his gavel, his hawkish nose twitching. Order, let's wrap this, counsel, your move. Tanya rose, her heels a steady click, her voice sharp. Your Honor, we've uncovered Victor Rawls' ties to the mob, phone records. Payments, they attacked my client, not the other way around. She slid documents across. Bank transfers from Victor to Duke, the biker thug. $500 3 days ago. Burner calls matching the flyer drop. The jury leaned in. A woman with a tight bun gasping. A man with a buzz cut frowning. That's dirty, he muttered. Pitts leapt. Objection, speculative. But Tanya countered. It's evidence, not theory. Check the timestamps. And Tate nodded. I'll allow it. Proceed. Marcus exhaled, his chest loosening, the jury's eyes shifting, doubt creeping into Sheila's world. He thought this could sway them, that truth might finally bite. Tanya pressed. Rawls orchestrated the violence, the flyers, the fire. He's the puppet master. Sheila's his blade, her words a hammer, the gallery murmuring, a reporter scribbling. Conspiracy? Lena's grip eased, her breath catching. Marcus felt it, the tide turning, the manslaughter charges teetering, the mob's blood not his to bear. Pitts floundered. No proof she knew? But Tanya smirked. She watched from her cruiser. Logged in the precinct grid, she's complicit. Sheila's face tightened, her fingers curling, the jury's stares piercing. A man with a goatee whispering, she's in on it. And Marcus dared to hope. Tanya was dismantling them. The end was near, freedom a whisper away. Tate leaned forward. This changes things, counsel, I'm listening. And the room held its breath, charges wobbling, Marcus's heart pounding. He'd survived the cell, the beating. Maybe this was it. But Sheila wasn't cornered. Not yet. She'd faced worse, thrived in chaos, and now as Tanya sat she stood, her voice trembling, a calculated quiver. Your Honor, I need to speak. He's stalking me. The room froze. Marcus's jaw dropped. What? He rasped, but Tate waved him silent. Go on, Officer Brantley. She stepped to the stand, her eyes glistening, fake tears welling. Holloway's been after me since the stop, threatening calls, following me. These photos prove it. She slid a stack to Pitts, who passed them up. Grainy shots of Marcus near her apartment. Her cruiser doctored with dates from weeks ago, her face pale. I'm scared. He's unhinged. The mob was his retaliation. The jury gasped, a woman with glasses clutching her chest. He's a monster, she whispered, the mood flipping, Marcus's hope crashing. Tanya surged. Objection. Fabricated. No calls logged. No witnesses. But Sheila sobbed. I didn't report, too afraid. He's got people everywhere. Her act Oscar-worthy. Pitts nodding. She's a victim, Your Honor. This explains everything. Tate frowned. Counsel? Rebuttal? Tanya scrambled. She's lying. These are edited. We need forensics. But the jury didn't wait. Their faces hardened. A man with a tight shirt muttering, "Stalker fits the pattern." The photos of poison spreading fast. Marcus shouted, "I never did that." But Tate banged, "Silence, defendant!" And Sheila sank back, her smirk hidden in a tissue, the tears a mask. She'd flipped the script, turned Tanya's evidence into his motive, the mob his weapon, not theirs. Tate rubbed his temples. "This complicates it, counsel. Closing arguments now." Pitt stood, his voice oily. "Holloway's a menace. Incited riots, bombed rallies, stalked an officer. Manslaughter's the least of it. Convict him." Tanya fired back. "He's the target. Rawls and Brantley framed him. The mob's theirs, not his. Acquit." The jury filed out. The room a pressure cooker. Marcus gripping the table. Lena's eyes locked on him, her breath held. He'd thought Tanya had them. The bank records a lifeline, but Sheila's lie had drowned it. The jury's whispers ominous as they vanished. Hours crawled, the clock ticking past 5, the heat suffocating until they returned. The foreman, a wiry man with a limp, standing, guilty, assault on an officer, manslaughter 10 years. His voice a sledgehammer, the gallery erupting. "Justice!" Finally, Marcus froze, his breath stolen, Lena's cry piercing the din. "No!" As Tanya gripped his arm. "We'll appeal." But her voice cracked, the fight bleeding out. Sheila stood, her smirk breaking free. A victor's gleam in her hazel eyes. She'd won, turned his defense into her shield, the photos a masterstroke. Marcus thought he'd cleared the mob, swayed the jury, but she'd buried him 10 years. Death knell. Tate banged his gavel. Sentence stands, court adjourned. And Marcus rose, stoic, his grey suit a shroud. Sheila gloating, "Told you I'd get you." Her whisper a blade as he passed. But then a clerk slipped forward, a young woman with a ponytail, her hands trembling, sliding a sealed file to Tate, his face draining of colour, his eyes flicking to Marcus, something shifting. The end, not quite the end. Marcus sat in the holding room, cuffs back, the bars looming, Sheila's laugh echoing. He'd risen, fought, thought he'd won, but her lie had crushed him. 10 years a mountain he couldn't climb, Lena's sobs a weight he couldn't lift, Tanya's promise of appeal a faint spark, but the clerk's move, Tate's pallor, lingered, a crack in the wall. The next moment, a storm he couldn't see. The Fulton County Courthouse holding room was a stark cube of peeling paint and flickering fluorescent light, the air stale with sweat and defeat as Marcus Holloway sat, his wrists chafed by cuffs, his grey suit wrinkled from the trial's brutal end. 10 years the jury's verdict still rang in his ears, guilty of assault and manslaughter, Sheila Brantley's doctored photos and crocodile tears sealing his fate, the mob's blood, the rally's dead, all pinned on him, a mountain of lies he couldn't topple. Lena's anguished cry echoed from the courtroom, her bandaged face a ghost in his mind. Tanya Brooks's vow to appeal a faint whisper against the clang of bars. He'd fought, risen, fallen, and now sat, stoic, his broad shoulders squared, waiting for the transport to prison, a decade stolen. But the clerk's move lingered, her trembling hands sliding that sealed file to Judge Tate, his face blanching, a ripple in the chaos. Marcus felt it, a thread he couldn't yet pull. The door creaked open, 2 guards stepping in, their boots. "Heavy, Holloway up," one barked, a lanky man with a buzz cut, but before Marcus could stand, Tate's voice cut through, sharp from the hall. "Hold him now!" The guards froze, confusion creasing their brows as Tate stormed in, his silver hair wild, the file clutched in his gnarled hands. Sheila trailed behind, her buzzed hair damp, her smirk faltering, Pitts at her side, his weak chin trembling. "What's this, Your Honor?" he stammered. But Tate ignored him, his hawkish eyes locked on Marcus. "You've got something to say, son?" Marcus rose, slow, deliberate, his voice steady, a calm that chilled the room. Yes, sir, I do. I'm Special Agent Marcus Holloway, FBI Anti-Corruption Task Force. The air shattered, a collective gasp sucking oxygen from the space. Sheila's face drained to ash, her hazel eyes bulging, Pitts choking on a cough, the guard stepping back, hands on holsters, Tate's jaw dropping. What? Marcus straightened, his cuffs glinting. For 3 years I've been undercover in Atlanta, investigating police corruption, targeting Victor Rawls and Sheila Brantley. That stop, the gun, the rally, the mob. It was my sting. I've got it. All. The room erupted, shouts bouncing off the walls, a guard muttering, "No way!" Sheila lunging, "He's lying!" But Marcus raised a hand, silencing her. "Check the file, Judge. My badge, my orders, sealed by the DOJ. I'm no criminal, I'm the hunter." Tate tore open the envelope. Papers spilling. An FBI badge gleaming. A letterhead stamped with the Justice Department's seal. His voice shook. "Agent Holloway, assigned to infiltrate, document misconduct, evidence submitted, recordings, witnesses, corroborated," he read, his eyes flicking to Sheila. "This voids the verdict, effective immediately." The gallery, spilling in behind, roared, Lena pushing through, her tears now joy. "Marcus!" she cried, rushing him, cuffs clanking. As he caught her, "It's over," he whispered, her arms tight, the truth a tidal wave. Sheila staggered. No, this can't." Her voice a rasp, Pitts collapsing into a chair. "We're done," he moaned. But Marcus wasn't finished, his gaze locked on Sheila. "You thought you broke me, but I've been breaking you. Every move recorded, every lie caught." Tanya stormed in, her heels a victory march. "I knew it, kept it quiet, fed me the tape. Brilliant," she said, grinning, the puzzle snapping into place. She'd been his cover, not his savior. Tate banged his gavel. "Charges dismissed. Brantley and Rawls under arrest. Federal review starts now." His voice iron, the guards turning, cuffing Sheila, her wrists twisting. "You can't!" She screamed, but they could. Her badge ripped off, her smirk gone. Her face a mask of pale terror as Victor was hauled in, his meaty hands cuffed, his graying moustache quivering. "Set up," he growled, but Marcus stepped close. 10 years. Of brutality, I've got files, tapes, witnesses, you're finished." The room spun, reporters shouting, "FBI twist." Cops busted, the sting unveiled, a decade of corruption crashing down. Evidence flooded in, backups Marcus had stashed. Recordings from drops, not just Jamal's, witnesses flipping, Duke the biker spilling under pressure. "Rawls paid me." Reggie the bomber caught on tape. Victor's orders. A warehouse. Of files from a safe house Marcus had guarded. Every stop, every frame, every death. Sheila and Victor's empire exposed, a rotting core in Atlanta's force. Tate ordered, "Full DOJ investigation, cooperate or face contempt." His gavel a thunderclap, Sheila collapsing, her knees buckling. "I didn't know," she whimpered. But Marcus loomed. "You knew enough, enjoyed it." His voice cold. Her tears real now, terror not triumph. Victor glared, "You'll pay," but Marcus smiled, faint, lethal. "Already did, now it's your turn." He walked free. Lena at his side, the courthouse steps warm under his shoes, the city sprawling below. A battle won, the crowd parting, some cheering, others stunned. "Agent Holloway," a reporter yelled, but he waved them off, his arm around. "Lena, home," he said, and she nodded. The nightmare peeled away, his cover blown, his mission complete. Sheila and Victor were led out, cuffed, heads low, her pale face a ghost. His empire ash, the system they'd gamed, now their cage. Marcus had played them, every arrest a step, every blow a trap. He'd risen from their ashes, not theirs from his. At home the cardboard window still hung, but the air felt lighter, Lena brewing coffee. "You're safe," she said, and he nodded. "We are." But as they sat, the dusk settling, Marcus leaned close, his voice a whisper. "Congress is next, I've got leads, this isn't the end." His eyes glinting, a vow beyond Atlanta, a bigger war looming. Lena's hand tightened in his. "Together." And he smiled. "Always." The sting closed, but the hunter wasn't done. The system's rot ran deep, and he'd chase it, relentless, the man they'd caged now their reckoning. Sheila's pale collapse a memory, his triumph a promise, the fight just beginning. This gripping tale of Marcus Holloway unveils raw truths about resilience, systemic injustice, and the power of truth against overwhelming odds. The first lesson is perseverance. Marcus endured brutal stops, false arrests, and a mob's wrath, yet never surrendered, his quiet strength a beacon for anyone facing unrelenting adversity. It shows that even when the world turns against you, holding fast to your integrity can carve a path to redemption. Second, it exposes the deep rot of corruption. Sheila Brantley and Victor Rawls wielded their badges as weapons, manipulating evidence and lives, a stark reminder that authority can cloak tyranny, and vigilance is crucial to challenge it. Third, the story underscores the cost of silence, the community's wavering support, Jamal's betrayal, and Lena's suffering highlight how inaction or fear can fuel injustice, urging us to speak out, even when it's hard. Finally, Marcus's reveal as an FBI agent teaches the power of strategy. He played a long game, turning their traps into his triumph, proving that cunning and patience can topple giants. This isn't just a story, it's a mirror, reflecting the battles many face and the hope that lies in fighting back. So what's your takeaway? Comment number 1 if you think standing up to corruption is worth the fight. Hit like if Marcus's twist stunned you, and subscribe for more tales of justice rising from the ashes. Share this if it moved you to act. Thanks for joining this journey through Atlanta's shadows. Your support fuels these stories. May you find strength to confront your own battles and wisdom to see truth through the storm.